It's May 9th, 1945. On the streets of the compound inside Camp Gruber, German prisoners of war stand in rows of 5. Officers of the American Army appear. Taking a deep breath, the oldest unfolds a sheet of paper, and after looking earnestly over the heads of the prisoners of war, he begins. The war in Europe has ended. The German army has surrendered unconditionally. The German Reich has ceased to exist. The German army is no longer bound by the oath of loyalty to the Third Reich. With considerable satisfaction, the officer raises his head briefly and continues. From this point on, the wearing of the German uniform is forbidden. The same goes for the wearing of all emblems, insignia, and medals of the German National Socialist regime. Conduct against these directives will be met with severe punishment. The German prisoners of war in the United States of North America will be returned as soon as the necessary transports are available. Without a word, the Germans return to their quarters. In silence, Hocker and I unbutton our shoulder straps from our field jackets, roll up our German uniforms into a bundle, and step outside. Here, I think, is the best place. What do you think, Willie? I ask in dead seriousness. It doesn't matter, anywhere, he answers, and shoves the fire shovel that we have brought from the barracks into the sand. A short time later, a hole about 3 feet deep lies before us. In an instant, our uniforms are thrown into the hole and quickly covered. When I had to put it on in November 1938, I was proud, Hocker says softly. A long time, I answer, already ready to leave. Forget it now. I can never do that. I met Gerda in it, he says, with a face from which all hope seems to have disappeared. As dusk lies over the land, it is as still as the grave in the camp. Like an unbearable load, the unbounded hopelessness lies on the soul of a people God has forsaken, and no light shines in their despair. For no purpose. Everything was senseless. Every offer of blood and possession from everyone is looked upon as useless. Finished. The Reich of the Germans, our fatherland, has ceased to exist. May 16th, 1945. On the 7th day of the year 0, I, Locker, Siegfried and I stand on the edge of the Turtle Run and watch their intensive lovemaking. We have overcome our depression. In its place is a boundless longing for the homeland and our loved ones. We want to go home without delay. What will they do with this beautiful camp when we are gone from here? Hocker thinks out loud. Perhaps they will erect a bordello for the training division on the other side of the street. In any case, we don't give a hoot. The war is behind us, mumbles Siegfried, while he pokes with a stick to hinder a male turtle as it tries to mount a female turtle who has opened herself to receive him. Let the two of them have their fun. I knock the stick out of his hand. There are old ladies who will not have such pleasure for much longer. He should take care of them first, he says, as though it is the most serious thing in the world. How do you think the German women are acting toward the occupation troops? I toss out lightly, although I have long been busy with such thoughts. Are you worried? Asks Siegfried. Personally, no. I just mean in general, I answer self-righteously. They certainly have other concerns, Hocker offers, true-hearted. It is because they have other concerns. Do you remember the situation in the hotel at Soissons? Now it is that far. This time we have failed. No one knows better than I what was going on in France and how bad the French were. I hold up to him. Our women are not French women. He tries to dismiss the issue. Do you believe they always did it for love? I am of another opinion. Often it was not only their sexual need that was the mainspring, I explain to him. If a woman did it for money, then she is a whore, he waves contemptuously. That's right, Siegfried chimes in. But often women combine both the pleasurable and the useful, even in these things. Now I want to go home, Siegfried says abruptly as we go to roll call. The return transport will occur as soon as the necessary space is available. Hocker comforts him. Do you know when it will be available? I ask. Yes, says Siegfried, when the victor wants it to be. After roll call, the three of us find a comfortable place in front of the sick bay and sit down in the grass. Like a glowing ball, the sun hangs over the woods to the west. Sharp orders of the drill sergeants ring from the US training camp in our direction. The war is not yet over for them, I break the beginning silence and turn my neck in the direction of the nearby city of Muskogee, just as a convoy of trucks moves toward the camp. The Japanese will take a big bite out of their arse, Siegfried suggests with inner satisfaction. They know that. There is a good reason that they are accompanied by the MPs on the trains. Hocker laughs maliciously. It's too bad for those who must bite the dust. The poor devils are certainly worse off than we. A feeling of sympathy for the young American boys condemned to death rises in me. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. The Japanese soldiers are at least as dangerous as the Russians, Hocker admits. Perhaps even worse, Siegfried adds. Then those idiots really believe their emperor is a true god, and a hero's death will stand them in good stead in the hereafter. They are dumber than we, I say angrily, as the whole infamy of the ruling class of this world becomes obvious to me. May 18th, 1945. Shortly after 3 a.m., I notice that my friend Hocker is not asleep. The gods may know how many times in this fate-filled night the path we have trod together continues to parade before my spiritual eyes. Paris, Le Bourget, Soissons, Chartres, Alençon, Le Mans, Cherbourg, the trip across New York, St. Louis, and Camp Gruber, Oklahoma, are the stations of our forever preserved friendship. Providence brought us together, but now an incomprehensible fate has willed that we must separate. The unexplainable fact that while in New York, Hocker followed the sudden impression to hide his Soldbuch and did not give it up as he was supposed to, is the cause of our separation. There are 450 unverified non-commissioned officers, including Siegfried and me, who leave Camp Gruber today for an unknown location. Hocker and apparently Schultz remain, although separated. All our efforts to remain together are for naught. Fate has decreed differently, but we approach it with the conviction that we know how to bear the burden. After breakfast, I stuff my things into my sea-sack with unending sadness in my heart. Hocker sits worlds away at the head of my bed. "Stop that chain-smoking. It makes me nervous," I order him, as once again he holds a match to a cigarette. "There," he mumbles, returning to his senses, and throws a tin of tobacco into the sack. "Pack that away. We'll give it up when I don't have to see you anymore. Then you can send me your ration," I tease without looking at him. "You had better look for another dumb fool who will take care of you," he answers, puffing excitedly on his cigarette. "I'll have Siegfried with me. He will swing with me." I try to cover my sorrow. "He is worse than you. Both of you will suffocate in your own filth. I can see it coming," he gambles. At once, the whistle blows for assembly. Should I try once more to convince the camp commander? I get afraid when I think about eating the sweet dessert alone. I pull his leg in playful meanness. "Stop all that nonsense and get out of here. They are already waiting for you," he says, grabbing a handkerchief because something bothers him in his eye. The prisoners of war selected for transfer stand in 5 columns, ready to march. Although the khaki uniforms carry a knife-sharp crease, they appear somewhat grotesque because of the printed letters PW on them. The sea-sacks have already been loaded. Only the clerks with their lists, which they continue to compare, keep us from departing. It is a mood like that at a train station. You have already said goodbye to your loved ones and talked about everything that matters, but the train does not leave. "Okay, whoever gets home first will immediately visit the families of the others," Hocker says already for the 4th time within 10 minutes. "And when we all get home, we will have a big party." We confirm our plans for the first days of freedom. "You all will have to visit me." "And me?" "And me?" Yes, and me," says the German camp spokesman. "But now you two have to do a right face like the others." And then, forward. Quickly we fly into each other's arms. "Be good, Willy," I say softly. "You too," he laughs bravely, and march is the order that tears us apart for God knows how long. 20 minutes later, we are sitting in the blue seats of the Santa Fe Railroad Pullman coach. They are mostly the old faces from the starvation camp Alençon around us. Now they are well-groomed, well-clothed, and well-fed. Siegfried and I are not the only ones who had to leave dear friends in Camp Gruber. Such is the mood in the wagon. But the American pace does not allow anyone time for sentimentality. We have barely sat down before the train rolls into the hot day. That we could not say goodbye to Schultz stinks all the way to the Stone Age and back again, I say to Siegfried, while my unpracticed fingers try to roll a cigarette. If you keep it up, you will have more tobacco on your pants than in the paper, Siegfried grins. But with regard to Schultz, you took the words right out of my mouth. He is a man of stature like I have seldom met before. Perhaps a little stubborn, but completely clean on the inside, I grasp in remembrance. For me, he was too straight, and I'm afraid it will be trouble for him in this land without prejudice, Siegfried thinks. I do not believe he will become acclimated. Do you remember at Cherbourg when someone told him to carry up the honey bucket? He did not refuse, but gave an example. I contradict him. I don't mean that. He offers me a burning match for my rolled cigarette, but his honesty with regard to the hearing officer. He only needed to tell the truth. In the meantime, it became clear to him that some had terribly misused the truth and the faith of a German who loved his homeland. I comfort him. That's why I am worried that he will come across as a bum to our former enemies, when he sees that everything he held sacred is soiled, and he therefore also considers himself dirty, Siegfried means. Do you think it will be different for us? It takes courage and truth, and that is the least that he lacks. Is there something wrong with his marriage? Siegfried asks. What marriage? I ask, not altogether there. Schultz's, naturally. I'm not very smart about such things, but something wasn't quite right. He chuckles to himself. His wife was a little slut earlier, someone's mistress, that's all, I say, not wanting to go into all the details. And he married someone like that? Who can understand it? He wonders. We don't understand everything about love. She was suddenly there and demanded her rights. Hocker told you in Le Mans that this shortcoming of Schultz is better than none. I peck at his thoughts. I wonder what Hocker is doing. He turns sleepily to the second single man from our circle. Certainly he is sitting by the Black Forest Mill, hanging his thoughts on the wheel, I say, and also close my eyes. As darkness falls, we pass through the ocean of lights in Kansas City and are busy preparing the coach seats for the night. What seemed an unbridgeable cleft between guards and the guarded during our first train ride has, for the most part, vanished. The guards are young men like us and don't concern themselves at all with what is going on in the wagon. In fact, one offers some good advice on how to best divide up the seats so that every one of us has a place to lie. Only the food could be better, but in the end we are used to much worse. By about 11 p.m, the last talkers are quiet. Night has dipped the land into deep darkness. Even our thoughts lose their sharpness, and finally we glide into unconsciousness. Key changes include punctuation corrections, sentence structure adjustments, and minor rewording for clarity and flow. May 20th, 1945. On the third day of travel, our train continues to speed in a westerly course through the seemingly unending loneliness of the state of Kansas. Since we wear the uniform of American soldiers, we are hardly recognized as Germans in the towns, unless they happen to see the PW on our backs. And so we are greeted by the citizens of this land, as we are always used to, as soldiers. Especially the children and cute young ladies catch our attention. Naturally, here and there, something goes wrong at the small train stations where we stop. The tracks are not closed like in Europe, and everyone can walk right up to the train. After they greet us and start to speak to us, the people who were initially excited usually leave in disappointment, but sometimes they are even more curious about us and appear to be looking for the horns on our heads, which the war propaganda has spread about all Germans. They look like us, one can hear, and that brings a sorrowful laugh over the lack of knowledge by people of the 20th century. This happens only once in a while, and we are honest enough to admit that in Germany there are people who know only their own manure piles. What causes us to wonder, however, is the fairness of the guards, who never try to drive the people away from our coaches, not even when they are young ladies who joke with us. It must be because of the much-praised freedom of the Americans. Only during a stop in Fort Wallace can we see long faces at the Red Cross station. Our guards return, loaded like pack animals, with long boxes of pastries over which we are extremely happy. Not only are we joyous, but also the guards and the friendly sisters, because giving by good people always releases a special kind of joy. But still, the American ladies seem annoyed when they discover that their dear offerings are being enjoyed by German prisoners of war, something the guards were silent about when they picked up the delicacies. As the train begins to move and the complications dissolve, the women show their happy faces and wave a cheerful goodbye, but it is not clear if they mean to include us. In any case, we enjoy the sweet pastries without concern, and the guards appreciate our thankful glances. Shortly after 2 p.m., we reach Denver, the capital of the state of Colorado. As usual, the train does not halt in the busy main station, but rather between two freight trains in the switching yard. Still, we have a glimpse of a small part of the city that glimmers in the sun at the foot of the Rocky Mountains, and whose tall buildings offer a scene typical of other large American cities. The difference between this beautiful city and the others we have seen so far is not the tall buildings which catch the eye, but the small dwellings, often built of stone, that look like they are set in parks and bring out a feeling of home in the onlookers. In the background, the Rocky Mountains rise, and on the highest peaks, snow and ice glisten in the sun like polished silver. After this city is behind us, the train goes north a respectable distance from the Rocky Mountains until it rolls into the small farm city of Greeley. An hour later, we are all loaded into transports and rattle out of the peaceful little town on a wide road through sugar beet fields for 3 miles to a barracks camp with guard towers and surrounded by barbed wire. Camp Greeley, Colorado, stands over the gate around which the U.S. soldiers swarm as we leave the transports. With the usual precise organization, we are counted, searched, and received by the German camp spokesman, who leads us directly to the dining hall. After a short welcome, the familiar red cards are distributed, personally signed by each of us and collected. I have been taken prisoner and I am fine. My new address is Camp Greeley, Colorado, Box 20, New York, is what those in the homeland will read should the card reach anyone. After eating the tastefully prepared pea soup, we shoulder the sea sacks that were unloaded and disappear into our assigned barracks. After a refreshing shower, Siegfried and I wander through the barrack city, Camp Greeley. The streets are all asphalt and wide, as is the entire camp, but as such, there is nothing of note. Here there is a division into compounds, and all internees are assigned to companies, which are housed in barracks next to each other. Camp Greeley is a pure work camp, and only the company leaders are non-commissioned officers. The comrades here have not worried about how the camp looks, which is easy to understand given the work in the sugar beet fields. But the camp is clean in every corner. There is a reading room with good literature and table tennis and other games for our entertainment. There is also a movie theatre available. Everything considered, it is very comfortable for us prisoners of war. "How is the work?" Siegfried asks an acquaintance who enters the reading room. "There is no lack of work," he answers, "but we watch out that we don't work too hard. Since the end of the war, they demand more and more from us, and still the food is less and worse." "How is it at the workplace?" I ask with interest. "The daily quota has to be reached before we can leave the fields." He laughs with amusement at our concerned faces. "But they will tell you all of that, and besides, you will see a film in the morning which shows how the work is to be done," he adds, and gives us a copy of a German prisoner of war newspaper, Der Ruf, published in the United States. "That will be a lot of fun when we are the next to hack sugar beets in Colorado." I laugh in Siegfried's face as he despondently grasps the newspaper. "You say it is fun when they assign you how much to do?" He strenuously disagrees. "We will see how it goes, old boy." I soothingly pet his rust-red hair. "It won't matter to us how the field looks when we are finished in the evening." At 9 p.m., I throw the newspaper onto the table. "Come, Siegfried, let's go, otherwise I'll get sick," I tell him, obviously upset. "The way they write is like manure in the cheese box," he offers and follows me outside. "It's best if we forget about newspapers in the future," he suggests while we are en route to our barracks. "I wouldn't say so," I contradict him. "Only this Ruf I will never pick up again. We finally know how badly the Third Reich lied to us. Where do prisoners of war in America suddenly develop a knowledge of things that were only possible in the dark Middle Ages? Do you seriously believe that this newspaper was produced by German prisoners of war? He asks. Only the devil knows who really writes it, but in the future I will only pay attention to the public American newspapers, I decide. We will have to learn much in this land. I have previously read an American paper. They contradict on page 3 what they proclaim in headlines on page 1. We will have to first learn how to read American newspapers. He slaps me on the back and opens the door to the barracks. Have you heard that we are to hack sugar beets? An old acquaintance calls to us. We have, I say as I make my bed. So, he takes my arm. Are you going to participate in the swindle again? What do you mean again? So far we haven't done anything. I laugh unsuspectingly, trying to avoid the subject. So you haven't done anything? A well-known hothead mixes in. Didn't we hold our necks out for Hitler and his cronies? Shall we now do the same kind of slave work for the Americans? Complain to Adolf. Now comes the consequences of his 1,000-year Reich over us, I say, uncaring. Consequences, you say? Is it a consequence when they take away your pass and then demand we prove who we are? He screams, rising to his feet. I don't really care. I turn away. And I say it must finally stop that they continue to make us work. If we decline to work, there is nothing they can do. We are non-commissioned officers, and according to the Geneva Convention are not required to work. He blows out. And I tell you, we should have stopped much sooner because it is the curse of a wicked deed that the evil that follows must be borne. I laugh from my double-decker bunk to provoke. What evil have we done? An old-timer questions. When given the command to march, we marched. Therein lies our entire guilt, I explain. And if we didn't march, they would have stood us up against a wall, he responds. And if we don't hack sugar beets, the same thing will happen to us, I laugh. Then the swindlers are the same here as there. The hothead ends the day as the light goes out. May 23rd, 1945. Monday, shortly after 7 a.m., we are dressed in our blue and grey work clothes and partake of the sparse breakfast in the dining hall. A carton of milk and 2 slices of bread, skin thick, is all that is offered to us. With only this, we are to work. But the mood is unusually good. We will hack them good today, Siegfried says happily, and sets his cap on his head as we leave the hall just as hungry as before. At 7:20 a.m., the company stands in front of the barracks. The poor company leader has trouble until the individual work groups are assembled. 25 men are assigned to a farmer, who picks them up at the gate with his own vehicle. Our noon meal is sent with us and consists of a slice of bread, sausage or cheese, and an apple or an orange for each man. The farmer provides the drinking water. About face, the company commander orders with an expression of concern for the first workday of this group of revolutionaries. But then an astonished laugh breaks out when we start to sing, "No woman has betrayed me like you," as we march in step to the gate where the farmer is already waiting for us. Moments later, we climb onto the truck owned by Mr. Miller, a grey-haired man with a well-meaning face. The guard assigned to us is about as thick as he is tall, and apparently has found no time to tie his shoelaces. Laughingly, he helps the farmer close the tailgate and swings up to us on the bench. The old crate rolls out backward toward the road. From now on we are costing the farmer money, and time is money is the saying which describes the pace in this land. 20 minutes later we stand before a field, and no one can say where it begins or ends. Everything around us is green, 12 inches high of green sugar beets. Only between the rows, through which the machine has already apparently gone, is it greyish gold. Grass is hard to discover. The ground is well worked, but the beets are too thick together. "I want good work to be done," the farmer says, turning to his conscripted helpers, who encircle him grinning while the disinterested guard smokes, leaning against the truck, his rifle hanging on the door handle of the truck. "I do not require a lot of work, only good work. Do you understand?" he asks in his difficult German. "Yes," We laugh and observe the funny little hose whose handles are only about 35 inches long. "I will show you how to do it," he says, as he begins to hack out the extraneous beets in one of the rows, until only one plant remains for every 12 to 15 inches. "That's all there is to it. Who is a farmer?" he asks, looking into our uncaring faces. "We are all students or shopkeepers," Corporal Kunze explains in dead earnest, while the rest of us struggle to suppress the laughter. "Bullshit!" the good man spits out and looks searchingly in the circle. "You know what I want?" He goes to a non-commissioned officer from Bavaria. "I am a pastor, but I understand something about garden work," the trained locksmith and former tank driver explains. "Pastor?" He finally stops and scratches his head. "Well, I can't do anything more. Please begin." Like a pack of young dogs, we bound out into the beet field and the fur starts to fly. With a face that God must have mercy on, the farmer looks at us. "Stop!" he calls after a while and points helplessly to what resembles a battlefield. "Don't do any more! You will destroy everything!" he babbles, and shows us the secret of hoeing sugar beets for the second time. "Do it this way and it will be good," he says patiently. "All your comrades have learned how." "We are thirsty," the bogus pastor groans and looks with radiant eyes into the sky. "I'll get some water," the farmer says, wringing his hands. "Please start again." After a short and silent agreement with the eyes, we go back to the rows. The small hoes play lightly through the vegetation. The farmer watches us excitedly. "Excellent work," he praises us happily. "I am a vulgar German," he explains to Corporal Kunze when he asks about his forefathers. "Then bring us milk instead of water, and you will be well satisfied with us," he offers as an inducement. "It's forbidden, everything is forbidden. I'm sorry," he swears. "Bring milk and do it fast. It is terribly hot." Kunze remains firm. "Okay," he finally agrees and goes toward his vehicle. "I believe we will do better with the old man if we don't cause any trouble. You know he has to pay $50 for the day, and he willingly gives us something in addition. If he is willing to get milk for us, then we will get something from him to eat. Are you all in agreement?" Kunze asks after his comments. "What do these stupid beets concern me? If it gets any hotter, I will not take another swing," the Bavarian complains to him. "Let's work until noon as we have been and see what the old man springs for." Kunze finally reaches a unity after some debate. When the farmer arrives with the milk, each man has finished 200 yards of well-hoed beets. The man appears very content with his field. "Good work, boys," he reports, and turns to the guard, who sits in the shade of the wagon, stewing in his own misery. Unconcerned with them, we continue to work lustily. But the negotiations take too long for us. Even though it is only 10 o'clock, the sun burns hot in the sky. He can either bring the milk now, or he can take the dirty beets to the man in charge himself. A man from Mecklenburg sighs. First, he has to convince the guard. Otherwise, he will have problems. Kunze warns with reason, and the work goes on. At exactly noon, we are sitting on the truck and travelling for our noon break toward the mountains, where about 2 miles in the distance, a lonely farmhouse stands in the shadow of trees. The breeze cools our heated bodies. Work, when you are not used to it, how painful it is. In the shadows of a weeping willow, we distribute what little bread we have. Regretfully, the farmer shrugs his shoulders as Kunze explains to him that we can't work with so little to eat. "If I give you food, then I won't get any prisoners," he says, looking with anticipation at the guard, who gets up and goes into the farmhouse. With a dexterity that no one would have thought possible, the farmer hurries into a nearby shed and throws 5 long loaves of white bread out the window. "The bill is correct," says Kunze tranquilly. "A loaf of bread for every 5 men. After 1 p.m., we are hoeing beets again. Yard for yard, hour after hour, we slash our way through the plants. This work is the shits. If I only had my sold book with me. Hocker certainly made the right choice." Siegfried begins to lament. "Think of it as a sport, and it is easier," I suggest to him, friendly. "Sports in this heat. I wouldn't last very long," he says quite apathetically. "Pull yourself together. It will pass. We will get used to it." I try to encourage him. How long do you think this swindle will last? He asks, taking a break. I believe I said once before it took 2 years after the last war. You must be crazy. Do you believe I will hose sugar beets for 2 years? He spits out. Not in the winter. The things don't grow then, as far as I am informed. Idiot, he says, and begins again to hack away at the sugar beets. Okay, boys, the guard calls as the sun nears the Rocky Mountains. Is it already 5 o'clock? Siegfried asks, slightly wounded. Isn't it too bad? Ask him if he will allow you to work overtime. I shove him toward the truck, where 2 contented Americans wait for us. As the truck travels back toward camp, we observe our blistered hands. Everyone earned 60 cents today, I think, and raise my view to the glaciers on the mountains. I can buy a toothbrush in the canteen with what I have earned, I grumble. Or a bottle of aftershave lotion. Yes, I can do that. Could you do that in Germany? Probably not, and they have prepared a warm evening meal for us in the camp. We will stand under the shower and a good bed awaits us. Shouldn't we now be content? After a refreshing shower, the 2 companies who now have their first work-day behind them eat dinner in the best of spirits. Parsnips, potatoes, roast beef and pudding are prepared by the cooks with the usual quality. We only wish there was more, but the chief cook comforts us with an extra slice of bread, and as we leave the mess hall our stomachs are busy with digestion. When we arrive in the barrack, Siegfried and I are dragged into an unpleasant conversation. The International Red Cross has given up the care of the German prisoners of war. All complaints are to be directed to the Red Cross in Washington, says the philosopher Braun, with raised eyebrows that spread like the wings of a bird. Well, says Siegfried, they haven't worried about us much anyway. That is a pigsty, Braun reacts. Now you can complain to the devil's grandmother. What do you want to complain about, Braun? Has anyone done anything to you? I ask, although I am not enthused about the change of events. Not yet, my friend, not yet. But in the future we will have reason to complain, he contends. You are a good philosopher, but we will have to see if you are as good a prophet. And I think I have found a way around him. Just read the newspaper, then your eyes will be opened. The newspapers encourage hate and revenge, and you can watch and hear it happen. He hits me on the shoulder. Why do you read them? Don't go crazy over the carelessly written words. If it becomes reality, we will experience it soon enough. I smile at him. Then it will hit you all the harder because you are unprepared, he says. Who told you that I am not prepared? Believe me, I am used to everything and have been for a long time, I explain. So, are you of the opinion that Germany will become communist? His eyes gleam at me. It would be a logical conclusion, coming from the denials and selfishness of the leaders, not only of Germany but also of Europe. And by the way, America not excluded, is my answer. And what do you imagine a communist Germany would be like? He asks, upset with my point of view. I don't imagine it at all. Only our hate for the rich Americans could make us communists if they happen to set up a terrible regime, I interject. That may be right if you apply the present political sentiment of this camp to all of Germany. Unfortunately, we know nothing of the attitudes of other Germans, for example, those in the Russian-occupied sector. I do not believe the Russians handle the population there with kid gloves, Braun explains. It would be in the interest of the Russians to do so, Siegfried chimes in. We will see who the smart victor is. If both happen to be smart, then the final outcome will be bad for us. I bring my quick fears into the open. You mean they will eat us up together? I don't believe it, Braun declares. No, I know they won't, he continues. You see, America must have war because war is their best business. That's what I read yesterday. I emphasize business. No one could read that in Germany, but still, the wire pullers mean the same thing. World domination is in Russia's program. If America continues to think business-like, then she will secure Germany's industrial potential and dictate the price to Russia. For that, they need skilled workers, who can only be had if there is a chance for them. If the Americans leave Germany in misery, then it will become communist without question. In that case, Russia alone will have won the war. Then Russia would not need to buy anything more from the Americans because she could find everything she needs in Germany. You concede that Germany and Russia would complement each other the best. Kunze mixes in the conversation from his bed. Wouldn't that be a second way out of this dead end? I mean, we have lost everything, so what is there to keep us from communism? The Americans, Braun laughs, in that they will help us to acquire new possessions so that their own business will blossom. Why did you take up this damn topic, paint the devil on the wall, and then give the Americans the last word? I ask Braun on the way to the latrine. Because the nihilism is so rampant, he explains. They talk themselves into becoming communists tomorrow, but do not expect anything from it. Now they simply hate the Americans. They also hate the Russians. Yes, they even hate themselves, but they no longer believe. One has to turn a light on for them, otherwise they will fall into the morass. And what do you really believe? I ask anxiously. That we are not yet completely lost, he whispers into the night on his way to the wide street, where he makes his lonesome rounds night after night. May 31st, 1945. As on just about every Saturday, the washroom of the third company is a beehive of activity. All the men are busy washing and scrubbing their work clothes. In this promised land, there is no shortage of wash soap, and washing is child's play. But still, you have to be there, and that is what drives us to haste. It is already 2 p.m. on this free afternoon. Drying is no problem since it seldom rains in Colorado. You just hang your clothing on the line behind the washroom and take it down completely dry an hour later. So, says Siegfried to me when we have our uniforms on the line, we've got that behind us. Now let's go shower and then afterward go to the recreation room. I have made plans with Braun for the afternoon. Don't you want to join the party? I ask courteously, although I know that he is not very enthused about philosophy. What is the topic of study today? He asks. A commentary on Nietzsche's Zarathustra, I reply. Is that where he says when you go to your wife, don't forget the whip? He laughs like a naughty boy. You know that for sure, but what you don't know is that he rejected democracy, I throw at him. And why did he reject it? He asks with interest. That is what I expect to learn from Braun today, I explain. I must finally tell you my opinion, Helmut. He pulls out a pack of tobacco and paper. You are all the time running from one wandering preacher to another, believing one thing one day and something else the next. Don't drive yourself crazy. Don't believe anything you don't see for yourself. What good is the old Nietzsche when he rejects democracy and the Americans are still determined to institute it in Germany? In the first place, we aren't sure what the Americans will do, and in the second place, I want to see how it is all connected, is my response. I admit that at the moment nothing is firm because I saw things during the Weimar Republic that stuck in my bones. Unemployment, lack of authority, decay, and their sorrowful companions. The egotism of the rich, the confusion of the middle class, the workers driven to murder their brothers, and the crime of the flotsam of all classes. We know that all of it centred in National Socialism, and logically we conclude that its downfall must take us along the road to communism. All I know about Marx and Engels is that they wanted to help the workers enjoy the fruits of their labours. But I was in Russia and saw how in practice it really was. I admit that the country still remains at least 50 years behind the West in its development because of the feudalism of the Tsar. However, now they can catch up quickly. If the masses can accomplish something, such as better clothing, housing, in short, what we Europeans understand as culture, remains to be seen. In any case, inside I don't feel that I am a communist, not yet. Here, smoke one. Perhaps I can help you a little more, Siegfried says, passing me his tobacco. You know I was not in Russia, so I don't have any disturbing pictures in mind as I consider the situation. But still, I am convinced that for Germany, Russian communism or Bolshevism is out of the question. We are an intelligent and industrious people that must live together in close quarters. I can imagine that if we were to develop a system based on the teachings of Marx or Engels, in which one does not rob the other. Instead, the fruit of everyone's work would be thrown into one pot and then, based on production, but with an eye to maintaining a minimum level of existence, redistributed to everyone. I believe we could develop a form of government that would lead us out of chaos. That would be an ideal solution, Siegfried. I agree. But unfortunately, you forget that not all people are idealists. Imagine what would fall under the pot when the wrong people had their fingers in it. Naturally, they would have to be watched, he interjects. And the watchers must be watched, and so on until we are all watched. Who will then produce anything, and where will we find any free time? Here, behind barbed wire, answers Bron, who joins us. Where have you been? I thought you were coming to the round table, he asks, disturbed. We wanted to take our dry clothes, Siegfried quickly answers for me. No, Braun, I admit. We were discussing the future and forgot about the time. Every discussion is fruitful, unless it is just gossip. Are you coming with me now? It is just about 4 p.m., he says, turning to go. Naturally, I get up, but I want Siegfried there too. I'm coming, Siegfried laughs and toddles behind. After Braun's interesting lecture and following dinner, I play a very fun-filled ping-pong match with Siegfried, and then go to the reading room while Siegfried brings out the sweat in another partner. Somewhat bored, I leaf through an old magazine, amazed at the advertisements for automobile companies, and feeling pure envy toward the Americans swelling up in me. I am hindered by the advertisement of a photo company. Even a second translation shows there is no other conclusion. There it stands under a photograph by an amateur. 3 American soldiers with their helmets in their hands on the grave of their fallen comrade, and nothing more and nothing less. You can make these same kinds of pictures with our camera, you just have to buy one, and so on and so on. Yes, is there really such a thing? I think out loud. Yes, says Kunze behind me. Even that too is America. Don't they understand the lack of piety? I shove a stool toward Kunze. They are realists and make business even with sorrow. Even mortuaries advertise for their caskets. He laughs, untroubled. What is right and what is wrong? I ask. It is nothing more than pig swill from the photo company. But the government cannot do anything about it because they respect the freedom of everyone. It is up to the individual people what they do with their freedom, he explains. What is your occupation, Kunze? I ask and ponder the sympathetic face of the 30-year-old corporal. Industrial salesman. I had just finished training and wanted to begin to earn money. He scratches himself under the chin. Let's have a smoke, Kunze. We have much in common. Are you married? I ask and pass him my tobacco sack. Thank you. He reaches into his pocket. I don't care for the Arizona dust. No, I'm not married, but I do have a fiancée waiting for me in Germany. Will she wait for you? I begin to be interested in him. Possibly, that is, I hope so, he laughs, somewhat uncertain. But you should know that. Blame yourself, I know, but you can't say that to everyone, otherwise they will consider you an idiot. For most men, the girls and even wives are only there for their pleasure. When they become old, then they make them cleaning women until they die. He pours out. You still have parents? I ask quietly. Yes, he readily answers. My fiancée is with them since her parents were killed at the beginning of 1944. We are from Schweinfurt, ball-bearing industry, the thorn in the eye of the English. Then she is well cared for, and you don't need to worry about her, I rejoice for him. No, my father's job was decentralized in 1943. They are all together in a small town in Bavaria. He laughs happily. They too are subjects of the Americans. I close the topic, and we retire to the barracks together to go to bed. June 6, 1945. The work detail of students and salesmen rolls out of the camp. It is Wednesday, and just like any other day, the sun stands in the east, full of promise. They will put it to us today, I think, as the truck of Mr. Roy Watson heads toward the city of Greeley. For the first time, the way to work goes through the city. As always, we have our bread in the box, while a small shadow in our stomachs longs for the time to eat. But now we have reached the first houses of Greeley, and we forget our hunger. Really a very nice farmer's village. Framed by well-cared-for lawns and weeping willows, stand cute white-painted family houses, whose small windows look out through the screens like blinded eyes. But otherwise they are inviting, and in front of every house on the well-kept asphalt street stands a pretentious automobile, such as we never saw in Europe. That would be something, to take a wagon like that into the Rocky Mountains for the weekend, Kunze nudges me, and one of the pretty little kittens in a colourful sweater who can drive you wild with desire. That would be something for my father's son, Siegfried exclaims, so that even the weeping willows shake. We are only slaves, you idiot. How can you express such wishes? The pastor cuffs at him. Take your eyes away from the backsides of these dolls when you speak to me as a pastor. Siegfried pulls his leg as he actually stares at a curvaceous being as we depart the city. Mr. Watson said you should hoe out the small ones and leave the large ones. Siegfried translates the farmer's wish to the pastor. Tell him he can smell my behind. It is always that the little ones must die. But now I have control of the situation, and this time the large ones are going to have to pay the price. The former tank terror forgets his role as a priest, and actually does hoe down the large beets, at which a hail of curses escapes the farmer's mouth. You fire me when my work does not please you, the pastor screams in anger. What did you say? Watson asks, upset. You can fire him when you are not pleased, Siegfried translates quickly. Without a word, the farmer turns his back on the prisoners and stomps toward the guard. Together they come back along the pastor's row. As they reach the former tank driver, pandemonium seems to break out as 24 men surround them with their hoes. Okay, take it easy. It is all right. Take it easy and continue, the guard says, lowering his weapon and going back to his old place. Cursing, the farmer looks back. There is strength in unity, also in this land, is the conclusion of this episode. At lunchtime, Mr. Watson is a changed man. We have worked hard for him. In thanks, he treats us to an ice-cold orange soda. The guard sacrifices his cigarettes. Contentedly, we doze in the shadow of the cool barn. How soon it will be 1 p.m. If we have reached the irrigated section by 4 p.m., the farmer will take us home, Siegfried screams across the large field, and scares everyone out of their grovelling in the sugar beets. The eyes of the men wander along the deep green rows, assessing what still needs to be done. That's nearly 200 yards, the first offers their guess. We can do it. A few are already excited. We cannot show what we can really accomplish, otherwise tomorrow they will expect more of us, warn the cautious. Dig in, you lumpheads. Before the others get back to camp, we will have showered and eaten. They respond convincingly. 10 minutes before 4 o'clock, the truck rumbles from the field. Greeley lies like it is dead in the gleaming sun. Whistling, we return to the camp. Water is the gift of God, Kunze says as he hurries under the shower. But to drink it continuously is no good, the pastor instructs. We learned to treasure it in Alençon. What do you think, Helmut? Siegfried shoots out like an arrogant youth. I don't remember. Otherwise I have bad dreams, I reply through the thick soap suds. I came from Marseille to Cherbourg. No one needs to explain anything to me, Kunze winks. Shut up, or tomorrow I will go wild and tear out the sugar beets, someone cracks from the corner. America be praised, the land of water and sugar beets, the pastor says, festively wrapping a towel around his hips and tapping out a few rumba steps with his wooden sandals. A few minutes later in the dining hall we sing the song, I am in love with Erica, just like Columbus with America. You won't be in love anymore, the mess sergeant mumbles, depressed. Why? Did you put too much salt in the soup? We ask, untroubled. Today we received only 2 small potatoes and 1 herring for each person, he answers, proceeding to dish it out. The bums, the swindlers, we won't do one thing tomorrow, we yell, the anger immediately throughout the hall. It is worse, as the cook throws the herring onto the plate. The canteen does not have any more tobacco, and in the future 1 pack is to last us for 14 days. Then we will refuse to work, is the total commentary. Be reasonable, the camp spokesman warns us, noting a majority vote to strike. What can they do to us? No food, no work, that's logical, say our hotheads matter-of-factly. They can't do anything more to us if we are united because the farmers need us, is my view. Then the company leaders and camp spokesmen should go to the commander and lay out the situation. We are willing to work, but we want something to eat. Kunze joins in. That is a suggestion that we can get a hold of, agrees Siegfried. That's the way it should be, concludes the entire company. At 9 p.m., our company leader reports the results of the discussion with the other companies and the position of the camp spokesman. It is not possible to form a united position with all the companies. The Austrians in camp are opposed to any threat of strike. The majority is also against refusing to work at present. The camp spokesman has guaranteed that in the morning he will speak with the commander about the possibility of a strike and indicate what that would mean for the farmers. He urges us to go to work, explain our situation to the farmers, and try to do the best work we can. He believes if the colonel is unwilling to agree with them, then the farmers themselves will persuade him. In this region, there is no workforce to replace us, except a few Mexicans that we meet here and there in the fields. Every day, the beets will grow longer. The next thing they need to do is water them with the stored water from the Rocky Mountains. All of the advantages are on our side. Even if it comes to sending us to a punishment camp, they will have to bring in other prisoners from far away. But that will cost time and money, and if they are not given anything to eat, then the whole circus will start again. So, comrades, go out tomorrow, make the farmer angry, and you will see that we will receive our food. The company leader ends his wise counsel, and comforted we all retire to bed.